Welcome to Twilight Terror Stories. Twilight is not just the end of day, it's the beginning of something else. A time when the shadows stretch and fear takes its first breath. You've stepped into that moment now, and the stories are waiting. Let them find you. Perhaps the hush should have warned me. The way conversations evaporated like morning mist whenever Silas Thorne's name surfaced. But I was adrift in the strange tide of inheritance. The novelty of possessing a house blinded me to the currents of apprehension swirling through this pocket of Appalachia called Hollow Creek. Only when the basement yielded a clandestine space did the fathomless depth of my father's secrets begin to unfold, their tendrils reaching dangerously for me. Silas Thorne. A phantom father, really. He'd vanished from my childhood landscape, leaving behind only the faint echo of sporadic birthday cards, obligatory Christmas trinkets, gestures devoid of presence. The lawyer's call, announcing his demise and my subsequent inheritance, struck a chord more of bewilderment than bereavement. A modest property, the solicitor had termed it, nestled in quietude. For a spirit frayed by the city's relentless pulse, the promise of stillness, of a bequeathed roof, felt like an unexpected sanctuary. Who refuses refuge? Hollow Creek materialized under a bright Tuesday sky, a tableau clipped from some forgotten postcard of Americana. Main Street unspooled, flanked by storefronts bearing family names, a diner seemingly preserved in 50s amber, and a startling superfluity of steeples piercing the heavens above its 5,000 souls. Silas's house stood sentinel on the town's fringe, a two-story colonial shedding flakes of white paint like old skin, its lawn surrendering to unruly green. Unremarkable, yet undeniably mine. The initial days were a blur of scrubbing away neglect, of sifting through the detritus of a life lived apart, attempting to sculpt an image of the man from his leavings. Anomalies began to surface, small dissonances in the quiet narrative, the utter absence of familial portraits, not one snapshot capturing my own younger face. Bookshelves groaning under the weight of arcane financial treatises, dense volumes on global banking. Peculiar fare for the man I'd understood to be a local fixer of odds and ends. But it was the safe, secreted behind a drab landscape painting in the study that truly snagged my attention. A formidable steel beast, seemingly pilfered from a bank vault, utterly incongruous in this domestic setting. 3 days it resisted, yielding finally to persistence fueled by late-night internet tutorials. The heavy door groaned open, revealing not dusty keepsakes but strata of currency, dollars, euros, yen, alongside passports bearing Silas's likeness but wedded to unfamiliar names. And beneath it all, a ledger, bound in worn leather, its pages dense with columns, figures, and notations that spoke a language I instinctively knew was illicit. Night bled into dawn as I immersed myself in that cryptic volume, a cold dread solidifying in my gut. These were not the humble accounts of a handyman. They chronicled transactions vast and shadowed. Resolved to unearth the truth, I took my questions to the town and encountered the second silence. Mentioning Silas Thorne was like dropping a stone into a still pond. Ripples of discomfort spread, conversations faltered, Shopkeepers recalled sudden pressing tasks elsewhere. Even the garrulous waitress at the diner, usually a fount of local lore, sealed her lips the moment I identified myself as old Silas Thorne's boy. He hadn't merely been the town recluse, he had been a figure of fear. I was contemplating this unsettling revelation one evening, nursing a beer on the porch swing as twilight bled purple across the hills when headlamps cut through the dusk. A vehicle halted at the curb. A man emerged, tall, impeccably attired, radiating an aura of command. "You'd be Silas's son," he stated, his voice smooth yet edged as he ascended the porch steps. Reluctantly, driven more by a thirst for answers than any sense of welcome, I ushered him inside. Marcus Vance, he called himself, a business associate. His gaze swept the living room, sharp, assessing. "Let's dispense with pleasantries," he declared, his tone hardening fractionally. "Your father was indebted to me. I'm here to settle the account." My heart hammered against my ribs. "I'm afraid I know nothing of my father's affairs," I managed, the words feeling thin. Vance offered a smile that didn't touch the chill in his eyes. "Don't play naive. A bright young man like you, I'd wager you've already located the safe. The ledger, correct?" My composure must have fractured, for he nodded, a flicker of grim satisfaction in his expression. "Here's the situation," he pressed on. "Silas was holding an item for me, a USB drive, contains information of a delicate nature. I require its return. And if I can't produce it?" The question hung precariously in the air. Vance's features solidified into granite. "Then, my friend, we have a significant complication. That drive represents substantial value to individuals far less patient than myself." He rose, adjusting the drape of his jacket. 48 hours. Find it. I'll return." A parting shot delivered with chilling certainty. "And don't entertain notions of departure, Elias. We have observers." His departure left a vacuum, filled only by the frantic thrumming of my own pulse. My mind struggled to assimilate the cascade of revelations. Silas Thorne, the man etched faintly on the edges of my memory, entangled in a web of immense, perilous consequence. And now, that web had ensnared me. The following day was a frantic excavation. I dismantled the house, room by room, seeking the elusive drive. Drawers were emptied, closets plumbed, floorboards tested, my imagination conjuring secret niches behind every wall. Futility gnawed at me. Only as exhaustion threatened to claim me late that night did a subtle inconsistency register. Descending the basement stairs, one riser yielded a hollow echo beneath my foot. Heart pounding a frantic rhythm, I worked my fingers beneath the wood, prying it loose. There, nestled in a shallow cavity meticulously carved into the riser, lay a small, unassuming USB drive. My hands trembled as I hurried to my laptop, inserting the device. Encryption, naturally. Hours blurred into a frantic digital assault until, finally, the lock yielded. The contents spilled onto the screen, chilling me to the bone. Labyrinthine financial trails, offshore havens, irrefutable proof of money laundering on a staggering international scale. And names, a constellation of the powerful, the prominent, Politicians, titans of industry, luminaries, all implicated in a sprawling criminal network. The true gravity of my inheritance crashed down upon me. Not just a house, not just murky finances, but evidence potent enough to shatter empires, to extinguish lives. Evidence guarded by those who would eliminate any threat. Dawn painted the sky in bruised colors as clarity emerged. Flight was impossible. Vance's surveillance was no idle threat. The authorities were an unknown quantity. Corruption, I now suspected, could run deep. Only one path remained. The next day was spent in meticulous preparation. Copies of the drive's explosive data were duplicated, secreted away in multiple, disparate locations. I composed detailed accounts of everything, sealing them in envelopes addressed to investigative journalists, fail-safes against my potential silence. I fortified myself for Vance's inevitable reappearance. He arrived precisely on schedule. "Have you located it?" he demanded, his presence filling the doorway. I nodded, leading him towards the study. The drive rested on the heavy oak desk, a tiny object radiating immense menace. Vance's eyes fixed on it, alight with avarice. He reached. My hand darted out, snatching it back. "Not quite so readily," I heard myself say, astonished at the steadiness in my own voice. "We need to discuss terms." Vance's expression curdled. "Terms? You're in no position to dictate terms, boy. Hand it over. We'll consider the matter concluded." I shook my head. "I've examined the contents. I comprehend its power, over you, over all of them. So, this is the arrangement. You cease all interference. The threats, the surveillance, it ends. In return, this drive and the secrets it holds remain buried." His hand twitched, hovering near his jacket. For a terrifying instant, I braced for the glint of steel. Then, slowly, he relaxed. A calculating smile unfurled across his lips. "You possess nerve, Elias. Your father might have respected that." He appraised me, a long, measuring look. "Very well. Maintain your silence and you maintain your solitude. But should I catch the faintest whisper of exposure—" "You won't," I interrupted, meeting his gaze, "provided you honor your side." After Vance dissolved back into the twilight, I remained seated in Silas's worn leather chair, the immense weight of the preceding days pressing down. I, Elias Thorne, had just leveraged blackmail against a dangerous syndicate. I was now the custodian of secrets capable of leveling dynasties. In one turbulent week, I had morphed from an ordinary man seeking quietude into, what precisely? An unwilling accomplice? A guardian of perilous truths? The definition eluded me. This much was certain. My existence was irrevocably altered. Hollow Creek's placid facade now seemed a thin veneer over hidden depths. Every neighborly nod might conceal calculation. Every passing vehicle could harbor watching eyes. The urge to flee, to shed this inherited house and its toxic legacy, warred within me. Yet I knew escape was illusory. Whatever Silas had been, whatever darkness he had courted, the consequences were now my mantle, my burden. As night fully claimed the valley, I secured the USB drive within the heavy safe, wondering, and not for the first time, what other shadows lingered within these old walls. Ascending the stairs towards an uneasy sleep, the realization settled, cold and profound. I was no longer merely Silas Thorne's son. I was his successor in the truest, most terrifying sense. And heaven help me, the meaning of that inheritance remained a vast, menacing unknown. "11:42, Tuesday night. Route 16 unspooled into the ink-black emptiness ahead, a solitary ribbon through dormant fields. That precise moment marked the unraveling of sense. I was piloting my weary sedan homeward after a draining shift at the distribution center, the steering wheel filmed with the tacky residue of a spilled, cheap stimulant drink. My headlights carved a fleeting tunnel through the absolute dark. No comforting sodium lamps graced this stretch, only the intermittent glint of shoulder reflectors marking the asphalt's edge. From the radio, the low murmur of some late-night broadcast about shadow governments or cosmic static provided a droning, ignored counterpoint to the engine's hum. Then, caught in the sudden flare of my high beams, an upright shape against the gravel verge. Dark coat, denim trousers, hair the color of damp earth. Leo's height, Leo's frame, Leo's face. My foot found a brake before cognition caught up, the car stuttering, tires complaining against the worn road surface. I slewed onto the shoulder perhaps 20 feet beyond him, the crunch of displaced stones loud in the sudden quiet. Through the rearview mirror, a distorted fishbowl view. Him approaching. That walk. Unmistakably, Leo's gait, the subtle, near imperceptible hitch born from a long-ago collision on a football field. His gaze remained fixed on the ground before him, hands plunged deep into his pockets. My hand reached across the console, fumbling for the passenger door lock. The weak overhead dome light threw the dashboard into stark, unsettling relief. In the cup holder, my phone pulsed with vibration, the screen flaring to life. Leo. My fingers froze mid-motion. I glanced from the glowing screen back to the mirror. The figure was now mere yards from the rear bumper. I snatched the phone, thumb stabbing at the screen. "Hey, Ben, you heading back soon? Mom's been trying you about Sunday dinner." Leo's voice, clear and immediate, impossibly present through the small speaker. My mouth felt stuffed with cotton. "Where are you right now?" "Home. Where do you think? Just tuck the kids in." The crunch of footsteps sounded closer now, just behind the trunk. "You're absolutely sure you're at home?" "Yeah, man. Been here since supper. You okay? You sound off." Another glance in the mirror. The figure stood directly behind my car now, head still bowed, that characteristic limp defining his slow advance. "Ben, still there?" A tremor started in my hands. Sweat trickled, cold, down my spine despite the air conditioning blasting frigid air. "Leo, I need you to do something, right this second. Go to your front window. Look out and tell me what you see." "What? Ben, why?" "Please, just do it." Through the phone came faint sounds, the shuffle of movement, the distinct echo of footsteps on polished hardwood. The figure behind my car had reached the passenger side door. In the dimness, its face remained obscured, angled perpetually downward. "Okay, I'm looking," Leo reported. "Same old view. The Kendall's place across the way, the corner street light. What am I supposed to be seeing?" The passenger door handle depressed with a soft metallic click. I slammed the lock button down and stomped the accelerator. Tires spun, spitting gravel before finding purchase. The car surged forward, engine roaring in protest. In the rearview mirror, a receding image. The figure standing motionless in the swirling dust kicked up by my tires, head still lowered, shrinking rapidly as I fled. "Ben, what the hell is going on?" Leo's voice was sharp with alarm. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat making speech difficult. "I'm Route 16, maybe 10 miles out. I thought I saw..." "Saw what?" "I thought I saw you, standing by the road." A beat of silence stretched across the line. "Ben, I haven't left the house since I got back from the site around 6. Nowhere near Route 16. 80 miles per hour now, the dashed yellow lines melting into a continuous hypnotic streak. My grip on the wheel was bone white, knuckles aching. "Stay on the phone with me," I managed. "Just keep talking." "Okay, sure. Want me to drive out, meet you somewhere?" No, stay put. Just tell me about your day. What did Maya draw? How was Liam's practice? Anything." And so Leo talked. He spoke of his son's fumbled catches, his daughter's elaborate crayon masterpiece, the reheated casserole they'd shared, mundane details, grounding anchors of reality. I clung to the cadence of his voice, trying to regulate my ragged breathing. Yet my eyes kept flicking compulsively to the rearview mirror. Nothing behind me now but receding darkness and the faint crimson glow of my taillights. Still, the air inside the car felt charged, thick with an unnamed pressure, like the heavy stillness before a violent storm. Maple Street, then Oak Drive. Almost home. Street lights cast pools of orange across familiar lawns, houses replacing the desolate fields. My own driveway materialized ahead. "Nearly there," I told Leo. "Stay on till I'm inside." "You got it? Want me to head over?" No, I'll call you back. Few minutes." I cut the engine in the driveway, the abrupt silence amplifying the thrumming in my ears. I sat for a moment, key still clutched in the ignition, listening to the faint sound of Leo's breathing through the phone. "You home?" he asked. "Yeah, driveway." "Go inside, Ben. Lock up." I grabbed my work satchel, swung the car door open. The motion sensor above the garage flared, bathing the concrete in harsh, clinical white light. Everything appeared aggressively normal. Clara's hatchback parked beside mine, the blue recycling bins standing sentinel, the garden hose coiled neatly against the brickwork. I walked to the front door, keys jangling discordantly in my unsteady hand. It took 3 attempts to guide the key into the lock's waiting tumblers. "Inside," I reported to Leo, stepping over the threshold. "Checking locks now. Call you right back." "Okay, be safe." I hung up and moved through the house with methodical precision, verifying each deadbolt, each window latch, all secure. Upstairs, the soft rhythm of Clara's breathing was audible through the slightly ajar bedroom door. Everything was precisely as it should be. In the kitchen, I poured a glass of water, my hand still betraying me, sloshing liquid over the rim as I raised it. My phone buzzed again. Leo. "Hey," I answered, my voice raspy. "You doing okay?" "Yeah, I think, all locked down. Clara's asleep." "Good. Listen, I was thinking. Remember that story Pops used to tell about driving back late from the lumber mill?" A cold knot formed in my gut. The one about seeing himself on the road? "Yeah," said he was dog-tired, working doubles, driving that same stretch he always took. Saw a guy on the shoulder, got closer, realized it was him. His own reflection, standing there. Same work clothes, everything. Said he just kept the pedal down, didn't stop, never happened again. He was probably exhausted, Leo, seeing things. Maybe, but he believed it right up till the end. Said it felt like some kind of warning. I took another swallow of water. Warning? About what? He never knew. Nothing bad happened right after. Lived another 30 years, didn't he? A shared silence hung between us. "What did it look like?" Leo finally asked, his voice low. "The thing you saw?" "Exactly like you. The clothes you wear for site visits, that brown canvas jacket, the jeans, even that slight limp, but it wouldn't look up. Kept its face hidden, pointed at the ground." "What do you think if you'd unlock the door?" "I don't want to think about it." More silence. "I should try and get some sleep," I said finally. "Got the early run tomorrow." "Right. Okay, call me if you need anything. Doesn't matter the time." "Thanks, Leo." I ended the call, but remained standing in the darkened kitchen for a long while, attuned to the house's nocturnal symphony. The refrigerator's low hum, the faint click and gurgle of the dishwasher cycling through its phases. Normal sounds. Eventually, I ascended the stairs. Clara murmured slightly as I slid into bed beside her but didn't wake. I lay staring into the oppressive darkness above, the night's events replaying on a relentless loop, the figure materializing from the gloom. Leo's voice grounding me, his presence confirmed miles away. Sleep must have claimed me eventually, because the insistent bleating of my alarm yanked me back to consciousness. 5:30 a.m. Pale, grudging daylight filtered through the bedroom blinds. Clara was already downstairs, the aroma of brewing coffee drifting up. She offered a brief kiss as I entered the kitchen. "You were late getting in," she observed mildly. "Yeah, hit some traffic," I lied, the words tasting like ash. How could I begin to explain? I moved through the morning rituals on autopilot: shower, dress, coffee, keys. Clara reminded me about dinner at her parents' on Saturday. I nodded, the information registering somewhere distant, unimportant. My car sat waiting in the driveway, looking benign in the morning light. But as I opened the passenger door to toss my lunch bag onto the seat, my eye caught something. Gravel, a small scattering of sharp-edged, dark gray pebbles on the floor mat, the same type of stone that constituted the shoulder of Route 16. With hands that had begun to tremble again, I brushed them out onto the concrete, started the engine, backed carefully out of the drive. The commute unfolded with tedious normalcy. Traffic signals cycling red, yellow, green, the flow of other vehicles, faces glimpsed through windshields, all heading towards the day's obligations. Top 40 hits replaced the paranoid whispers of the late-night airwaves. Everything was fine, except for the constant, nagging urge to check the rearview mirror, except for the persistent, irrational feeling of being watched, followed, except for the echo of Leo's words about our father's experience. A warning. But for what? Work. Clocking in, immersing myself in the mundane. Manifests, inventory counts, shipping codes, trying to anchor myself in routine. But the image persisted behind my eyelids. The figure by the road, head bowed, walking with that unnervingly familiar hitch. Around noon, my phone vibrated. Leo again. "Hey, holding up?" "Yeah, fine, just working." "Listen, I did some digging online about stuff like what you saw. It's a thing. Lots of accounts. People seeing exact doubles of loved ones, usually on desolate roads, usually nighttime. Sometimes they try to get in the car, sometimes they just stand there." "Leo, I don't want to know." "Right, but here's the weird part. In most of these stories, nothing actually happens afterwards. Like with Pops. It's just like you get a glimpse of something parallel, something other, not necessarily hostile. There was gravel in my car this morning, Leo. Passenger side floor mat. Silence crackled on the line. That's not possible," Leo said finally, his voice strained. "You didn't let it in." "I know." We both absorbed that impossibility for a moment. "Be careful driving home tonight, Ben," he said quietly. "Yeah." I disconnected and forced myself back to the stacks of paperwork. The afternoon dragged interminably. Every colleague passing behind my desk made me flinch. Every opening door sent a jolt of adrenaline through me. Finally, quitting time. I stood in the vast parking lot for a long time, keys heavy in my hand, staring at my car as the sun bled orange and violet across the horizon. I could take the bypass, add 20 minutes to the drive, avoid Route 16 entirely, but the thought felt cowardly, futile. Avoidance wouldn't change anything. Pops had driven on, faced it, and lived decades more. I had to do the same. I slid behind the wheel, started the engine. The sun dipped below the horizon. Darkness reclaimed the landscape. Soft rock drifted from the speakers, but I kept the volume low, straining to hear anything beyond the engine's thrum. Route 16 stretched before me, stark and vacant. Fields dissolved into blackness on either side. No streetlights, just my headlights slicing the night. Sweat slicked my palms on the wheel again. Every elongated shadow seemed poised to move. Every reflector momentarily resembled eyes catching the light. I passed the exact spot from the previous night. Nothing. Just gravel, dormant grass, and encroaching darkness. Then, headlights appeared behind me, growing rapidly brighter in my mirror. I released a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Just another car. Normal. The headlights intensified, closing the distance. Too bright. Aggressively bright. I squinted against the glare, trying to discern the vehicle's shape, but the light was blinding, washing out all detail in a painful white corona. My phone rang. Leo. I answered, keeping my eyes on the road and the mirror. Ben, on your way? Yeah, almost home. Got someone right on my tail. What kind of car? Can't. Lights are way too bright, blinding me. Pull over, Ben. Let them pass. I eased the car onto the shoulder, the familiar crunch of gravel under the tires. The blinding headlights remained fixed behind me, illuminating my car's interior like a stage. It's not passing, I told Leo, my voice tight. Okay, keep driving then, don't stop. I pulled back onto the asphalt. The car followed, maintaining the same dangerously close distance, the intense lights unwavering. Still there. How far out are you? 5 miles, maybe less. Okay, listen. Do not stop again. Whatever you see, whatever happens, just keep driving. Get home. Suddenly, the headlights behind me extinguished. Not dimmed, not switched to low beams. They simply vanished. Snapped off. I checked the mirror. The road behind was utterly black. But then, movement caught my eye along the shoulder. A figure walking in the darkness, head down, limping slightly. Leo, my voice cracked. What? What is it? It's back, on foot this time, following. Don't stop, Ben. I'm not stopping. I jammed the accelerator down. The engine screamed. 70, 80, 90 miles per hour. The speedometer needle climbed. In the mirror, the figure was still there, walking at what should have been a normal human pace, yet somehow effortlessly keeping pace with my speeding car. Almost home, I muttered, a prayer more than a statement. The figure seemed closer now, still confined to the shoulder, still walking, head bowed, but drawing nearer with every rotation of my tires, defying physics, defying reason. I wrenched the wheel, turning onto Maple Street. Street lights, houses, the illusion of safety. The figure turned with me, now pacing the sidewalk. Oak Drive, my street, my house visible in the distance. Almost there. Good, inside, fast. I skidded into my driveway, cutting the engine abruptly, grabbing my satchel. A final glance in the mirror. The figure stood motionless at the end of my driveway, where the concrete met the public sidewalk. I bolted from the car, fumbled the keys, the lock clicking open just as my nerves frayed completely. Inside, I gasped into the phone. It's standing out front. Close the blinds, all of them. Don't look out. I raced through the house, yanking cords, slamming shutters, checking the locks again and again. Clara wasn't back yet. Late shift at the hospital. Okay, everything's shut tight. Good, now what? I risked a peek through a tiny gap between the living room blind slats. The figure was gone. The end of the driveway was empty. The street beyond was deserted. It's not there anymore. You sure? I checked every downstairs window. Empty concrete, empty asphalt. Yeah, gone. Leo exhaled slowly, audibly through the phone. Okay, good. Ben, what the hell is happening? I don't know, but you're safe. You're home. I collapsed onto the sofa, a wave of profound exhaustion washing over me. What if it comes back, Leo? Then we figure it out, together. Yeah, together. We sat in shared silence for a long moment, the only sound our breathing across the miles. I should call Clara, I said. Check she's okay. Good idea. Call me back after. Yeah? I hung up, dialed Clara. 4 rings, then her voice, tired but familiar. Hey, honey, just walking out now. Be home in 20. Okay, drive safe. Always do love you. Love you too. I ended the call and sat in the dim living room, listening again to the house settling around me. The refrigerator hummed its low song. The furnace clicked on. Normal sounds in an abnormal world. My phone buzzed. A text message from Leo. Check your passenger side floor mat. A cold dread seeped into me. I walked to the front door, peered through the fisheye lens of the peephole. Empty driveway, bathed in the security light's glare. I unlocked the door, stepped out into the cool night air, walked to the car, opened the passenger door. The dome light illuminated the floor. A fresh scattering of small, dark gray pebbles lay accusingly on the mat. I closed the car door, locked it mechanically, retreated back inside the house, securing the deadbolt. I called Leo. There's gravel in the car again. His voice was quiet. I thought there might be. What does it mean, Leo? I don't know, Ben. Maybe nothing. Maybe everything. I walked to the window, pulled the blind aside just enough to see. The street remained empty, quiet under the glow of the corner lamp. But somewhere in the surrounding darkness, I knew it lingered, waiting, watching, walking with that familiar, uneven gait. Head down, always, perpetually head down. Clara, my wife, slipped from this world 3 months back. Yesterday, delving into the attic's dusty silence, I encountered her grandfather's clock. This discovery chills me, for I never consigned it to that forgotten space. For 23 years, that sentinel of time resided in our living room, a steadfast companion beside the hearth's glow. Its presence was as certain as the dawn, until yesterday. The wrongness began subtly. Descending the staircase at 6:30, the familiar morning light slanted through the panes, yet the living room felt hollowed out. I lingered, coffee mug cooling in my grip, gaze fixed upon the void adjacent to the fireplace. A stark rectangle of wallpaper, untouched by sunlight's fade across 2 decades, screamed where the clock had stood. My coffee found the tabletop. Perhaps it had toppled. A search behind the sofa yielded nothing. The dining room, the study, even the shadowed corners of the kitchen, all remained devoid of the timepiece. Solitude is my companion now. The only other key belongs to our daughter, Maya, nestled 2 states distant. This wasn't merely a clock, it was a heritage piece, a Weatherby and Sons masterpiece from 1887, a legacy passed down Clara's line. Encased in heavy mahogany, its brass pendulum a silent heart, the hood adorned with intricate carvings. It was a wedding gift from her grandfather. Clara adored it. Such a thing doesn't simply vanish. My fingers trembled, dialing Maya's number. "Have you visited the house?" I queried the moment her voice filled the line. "No, Papa, not since the funeral. What's wrong?" "The clock. Your great-grandfather's clock. It's gone." "Gone? How? That behemoth must weigh 200 pounds. "I know. It has simply ceased to be here." "Was there a break-in?" Pacing, phone pressed to my ear, I scanned the house anew. No shattered glass, no splintered door frames. Everything else sits undisturbed precisely as it was. "Could you have moved it? Perhaps forgotten? Sleep hasn't been your friend since Mama." "I did not move it, Maya," I interrupted, a sharpness in my tone I hadn't intended. One doesn't forget relocating such a monument. Ending the call left a heavier silence. Another circuit of the house confirmed the impossible. Then my eye caught it. The attic access panel in the upstairs hallway ceiling, hanging slightly ajar, its pull-down ladder dangling like a question mark. That threshold remained uncrossed by me. Clara utilized the space for Yuletide relics and albums thick with captured moments, but since her departure, it lay dormant. I tugged the cord. A cascade of dust greeted me. The wooden rungs groaned under my ascent. The attic air hung thick, stifling, even in the morning's relative cool. Sunbeams pierced the grimy panes at either gable end, illuminating a galaxy of dancing dust motes. And there it stood. Against the far wall, shouldered between forgotten boxes and shrouded furniture, the clock presided, as if it belonged, as if it had always been there. My hand quivered as I navigated the groaning floorboards towards it. A touch to the mahogany case left my fingertips coated in a thick, gray film. Impossible. The clock was polished just yesterday morning. I eased open the glass door. The pendulum hung inert. The weights were stilled. Its face declared the time to be 3:47. The second hand remained frozen. "How in God's name did you ascend here?" The words felt alien, swallowed by the stagnant air. Maneuvering that colossus up the narrow, treacherous attic stairs would demand the strength of 2 younger, fitter men. I am 61, my spine a roadmap of old pains. I could not have managed it alone, not even in some fugue state of grief. Retreating downstairs, I summoned the police. Officer Reyes arrived within 20 minutes, a young man whose face still held the sheen of the academy. He listened, pen scratching across his notepad, as I recounted the bizarre sequence. "So, nothing else is missing, sir?" "Only the clock's location has changed." "Yes, from the living room to the attic." He performed a methodical inspection. Windows, doors, finding no whisper of forced entry. He climbed to the attic, examined the clock and the surrounding floor. Returning, he stated, "There are no drag marks, no scratches on the floorboards up there. If someone hauled that clock upstairs, it would have left evidence. Precisely, I affirmed. It defies logic. Officer Reyes offered a look I'd grown weary of, the one reserved for the unraveling mind. "Mr. Thorne," he began gently, "you reside here alone now. Is that correct?" "Yes." "And you're quite certain you didn't relocate the clock yourself? Perhaps during the night without full awareness?" "I am certain." He made another notation. "Have you been experiencing significant stress recently?" "My wife passed 3 months ago," I stated, striving for composure. "But this is not a figment of my grief." "I understand, sir. Please, call us immediately if anything further seems out of place, or if you discover any concrete signs of intrusion." His departure left me adrift in the quiet house. I sank onto the sofa, staring at the pale rectangle on the wall. That unfaded patch gnawed at me. It shouldn't exist. 23 years should have left a distinct shadow, a testament to the clock's long vigil. Rising, I scrutinized the wallpaper. The rectangle was identical in hue to the surrounding wall. No demarcation, no spectral outline. A dull ache began behind my temples. The house felt suffocating. A walk through the familiar neighborhood streets did little to dispel the fog in my head. Upon returning an hour later, instinct drew me back to the attic. The clock remained, an stoic enigma. Opening its door again, I peered at the silent mechanism. All appeared ordinary, merely dormant. I attempted to wind it, but the key met unyielding resistance. The remainder of the day dissolved in the forced concentration of work. As a freelance technical writer, my current project involved schematics for industrial chillers, yet my focus fractured constantly. My ears strained, listening for any utterance from the attic above. Around 6 in the evening, it came, a single, resonant chime, clear as a bell, drifting down from overhead. I scrambled up the ladder. The clock face remained fixed at 3:47, the pendulum motionless, yet the sound had been undeniable. I lingered for an hour, watching, waiting. Silence reigned. Hunger eventually drove me downstairs. I microwaved a frozen lasagna, consuming it mechanically at the kitchen table while scrolling through meaningless news headlines, a pantomime of normalcy. At 15 minutes past 9, another chime echoed from the attic. This time I ascended not with frantic haste, but with measured steps, phone flashlight cleaving the gloom, one tread after another. The clock, 3:47. Pendulum, still. Dust, undisturbed. From behind a stack of boxes, I retrieved a folding chair, positioning it directly before the clock. If it intended to reveal its secrets, I would bear witness. Hours crawled by. The attic air grew chill. My phone displayed 11:52 p.m. The metal chair bit into my aching back. Just as resignation began to set in, the temperature plummeted dramatically. My breath plumed white in the flashlight beam. Precisely at the stroke of midnight, the clock chimed once more. But this time, the impossible unfolded before my eyes. The second hand quivered, ticking forward one increment, from 47 to 48 seconds, before freezing again. I surged to my feet, heart hammering against my ribs. Flinging open the clock's door, I reached inside. The pendulum hung still, yet the air within the case was glacial. "Clara," I whispered, the name a fragile thing in the frigid air. Silence answered. My fingers brushed the pendulum. The brass was so intensely cold it felt adhesive. I snatched my hand back, and then I saw them, faint, fresh scratches marring the smooth wood on the inside of the case back. Letters. Leaning closer, phone light focused, I deciphered the desperate carving. H-E-L-P-M-E. My knees buckled. I collapsed back onto the hard chair. Those marks hadn't been there earlier, I was utterly certain. Even as I watched, more scratches materialized, etched by an invisible hand. N-O-T-D-E-A-D. "Clara," I repeated, louder this time, voice trembling. "Is this you?" The cold intensified, biting deep. Frost spiderwebbed across the clock's glass face. Through the crystalline haze, the second hand stuttered again. 48 to 49. New words clawed into the wood. T-R-A-P-P-E-D. Where? How can I help? The scratches appeared faster now, frantic. C-R-E-S-T-W-O-O-D and SONSBASEMENTWAKEUP. My phone nearly slipped from my spasming grasp. Crestwood and Sons Funeral Home downtown. Clara's service. The viewing had been in their basement chapel. You're there? In the funeral home basement? IESCOLDDARKHELP. The second hand ticked to 50. I don't understand. Clara, we buried you. I watched them seal the casket. MISTAKENOTDEADWAKEUP. Ice crystals formed in my beard, the frigid air searing my lungs. You're in a coma. They buried you while you were still alive? YESHURRY. The second hand advanced to 51. My thoughts raced, a maelstrom of horror and disbelief. Alive? Trapped in her coffin? But 3 months had passed. Survival was impossible. Unless... When? When is this happening? Are you sending this from the past? VIEWINGNIGHTSTILLTIMEHURRY. The viewing, 3 months ago, the night before the funeral. Was this temporal rift allowing messages from that dreadful night? The second hand reached 52. How can I be sure? How do I know it's really you? FIRSTDATECOBALTDRESSCOFFEESPILLAUGHED. My breath hitched. Our first date, a quarter century ago, Clara, radiant in a cobalt blue dress, my clumsy spill of coffee down my shirt, her unexpected laughter, not mockery, but delight. She'd later confess that clumsy moment sealed her decision. A story whispered only between us. Oh my God, Clara, it is you. HELPMEPLEASEHURRY. The second hand crawled to 53. I stumbled down the attic steps, fumbling for my car keys. 20 minutes to Crestwood and Sons. If this grotesque miracle was real, if time itself had bent to carry her plea, I drove with reckless abandon, exceeding speed limits with numb indifference, arriving at the darkened funeral home at 12:27 a.m. Locked doors, unlit windows. I hammered on the imposing front entrance. A light flickered on within. A figure emerged from the shadows. A night watchman. "We're closed," his voice muffled through the thick glass. I brandished my wallet, pulling out every bill. "Please, my wife. Her viewing is tomorrow. I must check something. An emergency of the gravest kind." His gaze shifted from the cash to my ravaged face, perhaps perceiving the sheer desperation radiating from me. He unlocked the door. 10 minutes, he conceded, pocketing the money. I sprinted down the stairs to the basement chapel. There it rested, Clara's closed casket, flanked by funereal flowers, awaiting the morning's mourners. "Please," I implored the watchman, "you have to open it. I'll give you more." He shook his head firmly. "Impossible, sir. Strictly against regulations." I seized his shoulders, the dam of my control breaking. "She's alive. Perhaps a coma. For God's sake, please." He must have heard the raw terror in my voice. After an agonizing pause, he sighed, producing a set of keys. The casket lid groaned open. Clara lay within, dressed in the cobalt blue dress, serene, terrifyingly still. I reached out, touched her hand. Ice cold. "But she's warm," I choked out, bewildered. "Beneath the chill, there's warmth." The watchman, startled, pressed 2 fingers against her carotid artery. His eyes widened in disbelief. "Sweet mother," he breathed. "There's a pulse." The ensuing hours became a chaotic montage. Ambulance sirens, flashing lights, the sterile urgency of the emergency room. Physicians discovered a thready heartbeat, diagnosing a profound, rare comatose state mimicking death itself. They battled through the night. I sat vigil in the waiting area, tremors racking my body, my gaze locked on the wall clock as its second hand swept relentlessly past 3:47. At 6:23 a.m., a doctor emerged, exhaustion etched on his face. "Mr. Thorne, your wife, she's awake." I flew to her room. Clara lay amidst the white hospital linens, pale but undeniably alive, her chest rising and falling, her eyes open. "The clock," she whispered, her voice fragile as her gaze found mine. "You received my message?" I grasped her hand, finding warmth, true warmth now. "Yes, but Clara, how?" "I could hear everything at the funeral home," she explained, effort in each word. "Trapped, screaming inside my own mind. Then I saw it, in the corner. Grandfather's clock. I focused all my will upon it. Somehow, I don't know how, I reached across time, found it in our house. I had to move it, make you see." "The attic." "Yes, it took everything I had left to warn you." I pressed my lips to her hand. "You're safe now. You're here. Alive." A faint smile touched her lips. "What time is it?" I checked my phone. 25 past 6 in the morning. "Good," she murmured, relief softening her features. "We made it." Made it. The funeral was scheduled for 7. Less than an hour stood between her and the earth. I tightened my grip on her hand. We remained in silence, watching the nascent dawn paint the sky through the hospital window. 3 days later, Clara returned home. The grandfather clock stood once more in its rightful place beside the fireplace, its pendulum swinging rhythmically, its chimes marking the hours. Neither of us understands how it descended from the attic. The scratches inside its case had vanished without a trace. Yet sometimes, in the deep quiet of the night, I fancy I feel a lingering coolness emanating from the mahogany. And precisely at 3:47 a.m., the second hand seems to pause, just for an instant, between 47 and 48 seconds, as if recalling its extraordinary journey. That hesitation no longer unnerves me. It saved Clara. It returned her to me. Now, when the old clock chimes, I don't merely hear the passage of time. I hear its potential to bend, to fracture, just enough for love to slip through the cracks. Clara's grandfather's clock keeps flawless time, save for that single spectral second each night when it remembers defying death, remembers granting us a second chance. This account demands ink, a witness beyond my own trembling consciousness. 3 weeks passed, the backyard boundary, a skeletal ruin of warped planks and drunken posts, beckoned. Its decay was infectious, demanding remedy. So, armed with fresh-cut, chemically bitten timber from the local supplier, I commenced the resurrection on a Saturday, bleached pale by autumn's chill. My exhalations ghosted before me, fleeting proofs of life against the cold. The first rotten upright yielded with a groan of splintered wood. I plunged the spade into the earth's cold skin, deepening the wound. It arrived not as sound nor sight, but as a prickling certainty crawling up my spine. Observation. Not the casual sweep of a neighbor's gaze, but a focused, unwavering pressure. I pivoted and beheld her, a silhouette tethered to the far edge of the lawn, half eclipsed by the sprawling limbs of the old maple. A dress, the color of ash and rain, draped a form too slender for substance. Her hair, a midnight cascade, utterly immobile. A hesitant hand lifted, a salute swallowed by the vast quiet. "Hello?" The syllable cracked the stillness, obscene. No response, no flicker of acknowledgement, only that steadfast regard. My shovel scraped against the frost-kissed earth as I grounded it. "Is there something you need?" Her retreat was fluid, a slide behind the maple's trunk. I advanced, boots fracturing the frozen grass like brittle glass. But the space behind the ancient tree stood empty, utterly vacant. No whisper of disturbed air, no rustle of departing steps. A vanishing act perfected. Work resumed, though my grip on the tools felt alien, my fingers numb puppets. A tremor ran beneath my skin, raising the fine hairs on my arms despite the insulating layers. My gaze kept snapping back to the empty corner. Sleep that night was a besieged fortress, thoughts circling the woman's absolute stillness, the unnerving absence of fidgets, breaths, blinks that mark the living. Dawn broke sharp and crystalline. Frost glittered on every blade of grass, and she materialized. Same position, same shroud of gray, same vacant intensity. This time, no hesitation. I strode forward, demanding, "Who are you?" Again, the silent withdrawal behind the maple. Again, arrival at an empty space. And this time, The frost lay undisturbed beneath where she had stood, a perfect, unbroken sheet of white. Mr. Abernathy's door creaked open, revealing a man clad in faded team colors clutching a steaming mug. "Mr. Abernathy," I began, the words feeling clumsy. "A quick query. Have you noticed? Anyone unusual? A woman, perhaps, near my maple tree? Dark hair, gray dress?" The easy Saturday morning mask slipped from his face, replaced by something guarded, shadowed. "Silas, step inside a moment." Within the warmth of his kitchen, aroma of coffee thick in the air, he leaned against the counter. "Finch," he murmured, naming the man who'd sold me the house. Before he left, Finch spoke of something. Much like that, a woman, watching, always from that spot near the maple. Same description. He said she'd melt away if he got close. Said it began not long after he erected that very fence. A cold fist clenched in my gut. Digital trails yielded nothing. The house's documented past remained stubbornly mundane. The following weekend dawned, the unfinished fence a stark obligation. Tools in hand, the chill air biting, and instantly she was there. I resolved to ignore her, forcing my attention to the task, muscles coiled tight beneath my jacket. Sweat traced cold paths down my spine, then a flicker in my peripheral vision. Movement. Not retreat, but advance. I whirled. She stood yards closer, detail sharpening in the pale light. Skin like bleached parchment, bruised hollows beneath eyes that held no light, lips a bloodless seam. My pulse hammered against my ribs, a frantic drum. The heavy digger became a desperate anchor in my grasp. Another step she took, gliding, less a walk than a horrifying slide across the frosted lawn. I stumbled back. "What is it you want?" Her mouth stretched open, a dark cavity, but silence reigned. Her gaze, however, shifted, pinning the new raw wood post, then snapping back to me with chilling intensity. The tools clattered to the ground. I fled indoors, bolts thrown, blinds drawn, the echo of my own ragged breathing filling the sudden dimness. That night, a faint, persistent scritch, scritch, scritch emanated from the backyard, like fingernails dragged across timber. I didn't dare look. Work forgotten, Monday became a pilgrimage to the town archive, a descent into decades past via the hum and glow of a microfilm reader. Dust motes danced in the artificial light as I scrolled through brittle chronicles. Then, nestled deep within the faded columns of the Evening Chronicle, dated September 15th, 1927, a terse report. Construction mishap claims life. Hester Vance fell into an excavation for a fence post footing on this very tract of land before the houses stood distinct. 3 days, the article noted grimly, before discovery, the cavity having become a muddy cistern in the intervening rains. The scrolling stopped. The machine hummed on, unnoticed. The fence remained, a jagged wound in the yard demanding closure. Saturday arrived cloaked in pre-dawn mist, the air sharp enough to sting. She manifested instantly, nearer than ever, barely 20 feet separating us. This time, I laid my tools aside deliberately, meeting her gaze across the frozen expanse. Hester Vance? A minute, almost imperceptible cant of her head, the first true response I'd witnessed. "I found the record," I said, my voice low but steady. "I know what befell you here, and I am truly sorry for the horror of it." She drifted closer still, a specter solidifying in the gloom, perhaps 10 feet away. My instinct screamed retreat, but I held my ground. This boundary must be mended. Open holes, they aren't safe, but I will be cautious, vigilant. I give you my word. A long, suspended moment hung between us. Then a single, sharp nod. With hands that still betrayed a slight tremor, I retrieved the tools and worked. She remained a silent sentinel. With each new post hole carefully dug and secured, she seemed to draw nearer, not menacingly now, but as an overseer, ensuring diligence, ensuring history would not repeat its cruel accident. As the final timber was tamped firmly into place, I straightened, muscles aching, breath pluming, and looked up. The space by the maple tree was empty once more. She had departed. Her visible form has not returned. The fence now stands plumb and secure, a bulwark against neglect, the earth healed around its foundations. Perhaps that vigilance was her sole remaining desire. Yet moments persist, fleeting instants when working near the property line or gazing out the window at dusk, where that familiar weight of observation settles upon me. It lacks its former chill, bearing now the quality of quiet oversight, a guardian's passive watch. A small solar lamp now stakes its nightly claim near the maple's roots, a tiny beacon against the dark. And each September, on the anniversary whispered by the old newspaper, blooms find their way to the base of the tree. Mr. Abernathy inquired once, casually, if the Gray Lady had troubled me further. I offered only a simple negative. Certain knowledge feels too fragile, too intimate for casual sharing. Certain spectral arrangements are best left undisturbed. The fence is sound, the ground solid. Perhaps Hester Vance rests easier, knowing the trap that claimed her lies dormant. Still, habit compels my gaze toward that corner each morning departure. Sometimes only shadows stir among the leaves. Other times, in the liminal light of dawn, a fleeting impression of gray lingers, a testament that not all hauntings bring terror. Some merely stand watch. The timber holds firm. I inspect it seasonally, testing its integrity, a small duty owed to her, to safety itself. When the new family arrived next door, their laughter echoing with the bright innocence of youth, I made a point of mentioning the fence's recent restoration, its sturdiness. The tale of Hester, the woman in gray, the silent watcher, that remained my own. Not all histories bear repeating, not all protectors seek acknowledgement. But each dawn, a brief nod towards the maple acknowledges our silent pact, and now and then, almost imperceptibly, a branch might dip as if in reply, a flicker of ashen fabric against the bark. The boundary holds, the yard is safe, and Hester Vance keeps her vigil, ensuring no other soul plummets into unexpected darkness. It was all she ever sought, and while this ground is mine to tend, I will honor that silent contract, maintain the watch, preserve the memory. It is the barest courtesy for the sentinel beneath the maple. Dawn's first hesitant fingers pried through the canvas, illuminating a tableau that sent a glacial dread sluicing through me. Encircling my modest camp, impressions pressed deep into the yielding earth, prints of staggering size, utterly inhuman, absent when slumber had claimed me. As my gaze traced their impossible geometry, heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs, a single certainty crystallized. Solitude had deserted me in these woods, and the architect of those tracks remained somewhere nearby, observing, biding its time. My name is Ilara. I have long been a devotee of the solitary trek, drawn to the untamed quietude of the wilderness, seeking in its embrace an antidote to the cacophony of the mundane, a communion with the primal. Thus, when I charted a week's journey through the labyrinthine backcountry of Cascadia's emerald sprawl, I anticipated an unparalleled adventure. How profoundly accurate that premonition was, though for reasons steeped in terror, not triumph. The initial days unfolded as a rhapsody of natural grandeur. Verdant cathedrals of cedar and fir soared skyward, streams like quicksilver ribbons threaded through mossy ravines, and glimpses of distant, snow-mantled peaks serrated the azure horizon. My pace was brisk, consuming miles with unexpected ease. By the third evening, I had penetrated deep into the wilderness, farther adrift from civilization's moorings than ever before. That night, beside the flickering intimacy of my small fire, an unsettling perception settled upon me. The distinct, prickling awareness of being watched. I dismissed it as fatigue's phantom, the mind's conjuring in the vast aloneness, yet the sensation of unseen eyes lingered, tenacious and unnerving. Sleep arrived fitfully, haunted by fragmented visions of swift, tenebrous shapes flitting between the ancient trees. Then came the awakening and the prints. Monstrous depressions, easily doubling the imprint of my heavy boots, marked by long, talon-like digits that had gouged the loam. They formed a meticulous perimeter around my tent, suggesting a night-long vigil, a silent pacing by whatever entity had made them. I dismantled camp with a speed born of fear, my hands tremulous as they fumble with buckles and straps. Each snapped twig, every rustle of foliage, became an electric jolt to my nerves. My eyes ceaselessly scanned the dense tree line, anticipating the emergence of some grotesque form from the sylvan shadows. Throughout that day's forced march, further disquieting signs materialized. Claw-scored bark impossibly high on massive trunks, tufts of coarse, midnight dark hair snagged on defiant branches, and, ceaselessly, that oppressive weight of unseen observation. My rational mind scrabbled for explanations. Anomalous ursine giants, fear-fueled phantoms born of isolation. Yet instinct, raw and ancient, whispered of the unknown, of something profoundly other. As dusk began to bleed through the canopy, the thought of establishing camp became a source of visceral dread. The vulnerability of sleep, cocooned in flimsy nylon while that thing prowled the perimeter, was a terrifying prospect. Yet the forest, dense and deepening into impenetrable gloom, offered no sanctuary for nocturnal travel. I selected a diminutive clearing, pitching my shelter with its back pressed against the unyielding solidity of a large boulder. A meager psychological bulwark, but a bulwark nonetheless. I forewent the fire, unwilling to beacon my presence into the encroaching darkness. Huddled within my sleeping bag, the forest's nocturnal symphony seemed amplified to an unbearable degree. An owl's hoot fractured the silence like a startled question. The wind, soughing through the high pines, mimicked hushed, menacing colloquy, whispering syllables that almost formed my name. Slumber, when it finally overtook me, was a turbulent sea of nightmares. I fled through an endless, twilit forest, pursued by a hulking shadow, its hot breath searing the nape of my neck. I jolted awake, heart leaping, breath catching in my throat. The faintest pre-dawn luminescence filtered through the leaves. And then I heard it, a low, guttural resonance that seemed to vibrate up from the very earth, emanating from everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. I lay utterly immobile, scarcely daring to draw breath. The growl sounded again, closer, imbued with chilling proximity. Then a heavy footfall crushed the undergrowth. Another. It was circling just as it had the night before. In that frozen moment, the imperative became absolute. Run. A desperate gamble, perhaps suicidal, yet remaining felt like a passive acceptance of annihilation. I counted 3 frantic heartbeats, then erupted from the tent, not bothering with the zipper, tearing through the fabric in a single explosive movement. A fleeting glimpse, something immense, Stygian, a roar that vibrated my bones, but I refused to look back. I simply ran, a frantic ballet through grasping undergrowth, vaulting over decaying logs, my pack a punishing weight against my spine. Behind me, I heard it, the heavy, crashing pursuit, gaining with terrifying speed. Trees blurred into a vertiginous green-brown smear. My lungs scorched. My legs screamed with exertion. But terror was a merciless engine driving me onward. Directionless, planless, propelled only by the instinct to be away. Then, abruptly, miraculously, I burst from the tree line onto the lip of a precipice. Far below, a river churned, its surface a maelstrom of white water. The drop was vertiginous, likely lethal, yet in that instant it shimmered with the allure of salvation. Behind me, the crashing pursuit intensified, the creature breaking through the final barrier of brush. It was now or never. Drawing a ragged breath, uttering a silent, desperate entreaty, I launched myself into the void. The fall felt suspended in time. The shriek of wind in my ears yielded to the thunderous roar of water, and then came the shocking cold, the river's icy current dragging me down into its turbulent depths. I fought wildly, clawing my way back to the surface, gasping for precious air, surrendering to the relentless flow that bore me away. How long I remained in that frigid embrace, I cannot say, an eternity compressed into minutes. Eventually, numb fingers closed around a low-hanging branch, and summoning the last vestiges of strength, I hauled myself onto the muddy shore. I lay there, coughing, shivering uncontrollably, certain that any moment the forest would disgorge its horror to finish its hunt. But it did not come. As the sun climbed higher, its nascent warmth a fragile benediction on my soaked form, a tenuous flicker of hope ignited within me. Perhaps escape was possible. Perhaps the ordeal was truly over. 2 days it took, adrift in a paranoid landscape where every sound was a potential threat, every shadow a lurking menace, before I stumbled back into the realm of the mundane. Entering the small, unassuming town, I must have appeared a spectral figure, lacerated, bruised, clad in tattered, mud-caked remnants of clothing. The local sheriff absorbed my fragmented account with a blend of professional skepticism and reluctant concern. He admitted to vague, persistent whispers of strangeness in those woods, folklore passed down through generations, yet nothing concrete had ever surfaced. Subsequent search parties discovered my abandoned campsite, the tent reduced to shredded ribbons, but found no trace, no physical evidence of the entity I described. In the weeks that followed, I attempted to quarantine the memory, to rationalize the terror. A bear, perhaps, unusually large and aggressive, a cougar, magnified by fear into monstrous proportions. But conviction settled deep in my marrow, immutable and chilly. What I encountered in that primordial wilderness was something uncatalogued, something that defied known taxonomy, something that should not be. I no longer seek solace in solitary communion with nature. The wilderness that once beckoned with promises of peace now resonates with profound dread. Yet sometimes, in the deep quiet of the night, my gaze drifts towards the distant, ink-dark silhouette of the forest, and I wonder if it remains, watching, waiting. And I feel an answering awareness, a certainty that somewhere in the most shadowed heart of those woods, something is indeed looking back. The experience irrevocably altered the contours of my being. I move through the world now with a heightened caution, acutely aware of the gossamer veil separating our perceived reality from the mysteries coiled just beyond sight. I've become an amateur archivist of the uncanny, delving into accounts of similar encounters, attempting to map the terrain of the inexplicable to make sense of my own harrowing passage. Most dismiss my story with polite smiles or outright declarations of delusion. But occasionally, I encounter another soul who listens with a different quality of attention, someone whose eyes hold the reflection of having glimpsed the unexplainable. In those rare moments of shared unspoken understanding, the isolation abates, however briefly. Nightmares still visit, replaying the chilling discovery of those prints in the dawn light, the visceral terror of the chase through the suffocating trees. Yet, I have come to recognize that the encounter, terrifying as it was, offered a brutal, illuminating glimpse beyond the ordinary. It fractured my complacent understanding of the world, revealing its capacity for strangeness, for wonders dark and profound. So, while my boots may never again tread those specific trails, a strange, paradoxical gratitude lingers. It taught me that mystery persists, that the unknown still waits in the deep places. And sometimes, if one is brave enough, or perhaps foolish enough, to venture into the wild heart of things, one might just stumble upon something that fundamentally reshapes the known world. But should you ever find yourself alone in the deep woods and feel that ancient prickle on your neck, that primal tremor signaling unseen observation, remember my tale and run. Run without hesitation. Run as if your soul depends upon it, because you can never truly know what waits just beyond the tree line, poised to claim you as its own. Still wrestling with the plastic phantom, Silas? Alara's voice held a familiar, playful edge as I rummaged through the worn leather confines of my wallet. We stood, bathed in the cool, electronic luminescence of the Sterling Trust ATM, our final ritual before the promise of pizza at the Gilded Slice. For a Friday evening, the street breathed an unusual quietude. Storefronts were dark canvases, save for the unwavering beacon of the 24-hour apothecary across the intersection. Some of us operate outside the benevolent empire of parental funding, I retorted, finally extracting the slim rectangle of my debit card. The ATM screen cast a cyan glow onto the pavement, a familiar waypoint on my twice-weekly pilgrimage since university life began. Ilara, leaning languidly against the cool brickwork, lost herself in the flickering scroll of her phone while the machine awaited my credentials. That's when the sound began. Incoherent murmurs, threads of speech weaving into a louder, approaching dissonance. A woman, cloaked in a dress bearing the geography of old stains, shuffled into the periphery. Her locomotion was erratic, unpredictable, a jarring dance dictated by unseen forces. She conversed with phantoms, her gestures sharp and sudden. "Pay her no mind," Ilara whispered, her nonchalance thinning as she edged closer. "Let's just get this done." But the woman's gaze snagged on us. Her trajectory shifted with unnerving abruptness, a direct course set for our small alcove. Her phantom dialogue grew agitated, sharp. My own fingers, suddenly clumsy, fumbled over the withdrawal options displayed on the screen. She was near enough now, her words acquiring a chilling clarity. "They listen, you know, always listening. Through these contraptions, the money, they see it all." She halted directly behind us, swaying precariously. I felt Ilara stiffen beside me, a silent, shared broadcast of alarm beneath a veneer of forced calm. The woman's reflection materialized ghost-like on the ATM surface, her eyes wide, untethered. "You're with them," she suddenly cried out, her hand clamping onto Ilara's arm with surprising strength. "Using their devices, amplifying their signals." Ilara wrenched her arm away, a sharp gasp escaping her. We retreated from the machine, the transaction abandoned, forgotten. "We don't want any trouble," I stated, my voice firmer than I felt, instinctively placing myself between Ilara and the unpredictable figure. "We're leaving now." Her ears, however, seemed sealed to reason. A hand dipped into the folds of her dress, emerging with something that caught the streetlight's gleam. Just coins, a humble collection of copper and nickel, yet clutched with the desperate intensity of weaponry. They filled me with a primal dread. She began hurling them, the small discs skipping off the pavement, her voice escalating into screams about invisible networks and hidden frequencies. A penny struck my cheek, a sharp sting that jolted us into motion. We turned, breaking into a run towards the brightly lit refuge of the apothecary, the sole outpost of commerce still awake. Her shouts pursued us, ricocheting off the silent facades of closed businesses. Through the wide glass windows, I saw the pharmacist. His name tag read Ronan, already lifting the phone receiver, his expression one of weary recognition. The automatic doors hissed open just as another volley of coins rained down. We scrambled inside, and Ronan, with practiced composure, slapped the lock button. The woman collided with the glass partition, her screams muffled but unabated, the reinforced doors holding fast. "Authorities are en route," Ronan informed us quietly, ushering us further from the entrance. "She's been here before, harassing folks at the bank machine. Needs help, but she won't accept it." Another employee appeared from a back room, proffering bottles of water with sympathetic eyes. Outside, the woman paced, a caged storm alternating between furious invective aimed at the impassive glass and muttered dialogues with her unseen companions. Her movements grew increasingly agitated, yet the locked doors remained an insurmountable barrier. When the police cruiser arrived, It wasn't with sirens blaring or lights flashing aggressively. Instead, a crisis intervention specialist emerged, approaching the woman not as a perpetrator, but as a person in distress, her voice a low, calming current. It was a slow process, a careful negotiation between worlds, but gradually the frantic energy subsided. They persuaded her, gently, to accompany them, to receive the care she so clearly required. That night rippled outwards, instigating tangible changes. Sterling Trust fortified the ATM area with brighter illumination and vigilant security cameras. The apothecary formalized its role, establishing a safe haven initiative, training Ronan and his colleagues to navigate various crises. Other local businesses took note, adopting similar protocols. Mental health outreach programs gained traction, aiming to provide support before desperation could ignite into public confrontation. The police department bolstered its crisis intervention team, prioritizing de-escalation and connection to services over simple enforcement. Alara and I found ourselves drawn to volunteer work, joining a campus group dedicated to mental health advocacy and student safety. We learned the subtle lexicon of crisis, the delicate balance between compassion and self-preservation, the crucial knowledge of when and how to summon aid for others and for ourselves. Ronan's apothecary evolved beyond a mere sanctuary. It became a nexus for community resilience. He spearheaded training sessions, weaving a network of safe spaces throughout the neighborhood, places where vulnerability could find temporary shelter. One significant improvement. The bank relocated its ATM to a secure, glassed-in vestibule, accessible around the clock via card swipe, complete with a help button linked directly to both security dispatch and crisis support lines. Other financial institutions in the vicinity followed this model. Months melted away. Then, one afternoon, we encountered her again, composed, accompanied by a support worker, her eyes clear. She offered a quiet apology, a testament to the help she'd finally embraced. She was slowly reintegrating, even sharing her story at awareness events, speaking to the profound difficulty and ultimate necessity of accepting support. Just last week, I observed a young student faltering near the ATM vestibule, her gaze fixed uneasily on a man exhibiting erratic behavior nearby. Without a second thought, I guided her across the street to the apothecary. Ronan greeted her with the same unflappable calm that had anchored us months before. The incident had irrevocably altered our understanding of communal safety. It wasn't merely about erecting defenses against perceived threats, but about weaving a stronger social fabric, one capable of supporting everyone within it. Sometimes, the figure radiating menace is the one most profoundly adrift, most desperately in need of a lifeline. Now, approaching any ATM, my awareness is twofold, scanning not just for potential danger but also for the quiet signals of distress, the subtle indicators that someone might require assistance. That help button signifies more than an emergency failsafe. It represents a connection to an entire ecosystem of care. Safety, we learned, transcends locks and lumens and watchful lenses. It resides in the collective capacity to look out for one another, to discern distress from danger, to know instinctively when to shield and when to extend a hand. The coins from that tumultuous night, gathered from the pavement in the aftermath, now reside in a simple glass jar on Ronan's counter. They aren't trophies of fear, but tokens of transformation. Each copper disc a quiet reminder of empathy learned, community fortified, and the enduring power of showing up for each other, especially when the storm breaks. The deadbolt slid home with a grating cough, a sound that sealed the stale air and echoed unnervingly in the quiet. That metallic finality burrowed under my skin. In that instant, the threadbare room of the Sundown Lodge ceased being a refuge and became something else entirely. Something with teeth. And the proprietors, the gentle, silver-haired couple, they were illusions. Flimsy stagecraft against a backdrop of rot. It was meant to be nothing more than a pause, a brief surrender to exhaustion on the long pilgrimage to Alara's sister's wedding. 14 hours stretched before us like a sentence, and we'd elected to cleave it in two. We'd been navigating by frayed nerves in the glow of the dashboard for what felt like an eternity. The conversation dwindling to clipped remarks about missed turns, fatigue sanding us down to raw irritation. Then, through the deepening twilight, a flicker, the neon promise of vacancy, sputtering weakly from the Sundown Lodge sign. Salvation, or so it seemed. The structure sagged, its paint peeling like sunburnt skin, the lights above the doors buzzing fitfully, but exhaustion is a powerful negotiator. A barn with 4 walls would have sufficed. We pushed into an empty office, the chime of a tiny bell above the door sounding overly loud in the stillness. A beat passed, then an elderly woman emerged from a shadowed back room. Her hair, the color of old silver, was pinned in a tidy knot. Her smile seemed practiced, perfected. "Well now, welcome," she offered, her voice a warm, syrupy drawl. "A room you'll be needing, I imagine." We murmured assent, relief washing over us like cool water. While Alara navigated the check-in card, my gaze drifted to the doorway behind the counter. An old man stood there, partially obscured, watching us. Not casually observing, but watching, with an intensity that felt almost predatory, a hunger in his stillness. When our eyes met, his flickered away, retreating into the gloom. "I'm Agnes," the woman chirped, sliding a heavy brass key across the counter. "No flimsy plastic here. And that watcher is my Silas. Room 7 for you, right down at the far end. Anything you require, you just give a holler." We offered tired thanks and trudged towards our designated room. Inside, the air hung thick with the scent of dust and disinfectant. Faded floral patterns climbed the walls, and the bed groaned a mournful protest as we tested its dubious strength. Still, it was horizontal, a place to shed the road. Dinner was a rustling symphony of cellophane wrappers from the lobby's ancient vending machine, the culinary highlight of this forgotten speck on the map. We collapsed onto the protesting mattress. Sleep was a shy creature, easily startled. I was hovering on its edge when the sound scraped me back to awareness. Footsteps on the walkway outside, measured, unhurried, pausing directly before our door. My breath hitched. I strained my ears against the silence that followed, thick and expectant. Then the steps moved on. Just another weary traveler, I reasoned, but the knot in my stomach tightened, refusing to believe the lie. "Did you hear that?" Ilara's whisper sliced through the dark. She was awake, rigid beside me. "Yeah," I breathed back. "Probably nothing. Sleep." But sleep remained elusive. The old building sighed and settled around us, each creak a potential threat, every distant engine noise a reason for vigilance. An undeniable wrongness permeated the place, a subtle dissonance I couldn't name. Then, somewhere around the darkest hour, maybe 2 a.m., it came. A choked scream, abruptly stifled, originating from somewhere nearby. Ilara bolted upright, her eyes enormous pools of reflected fear in the gloom. "What was that?" she hissed, her voice trembling. "Don't know," I answered, already swinging my legs out of bed, fumbling for my jeans. "Stay put. I'm gonna look." "Are you insane?" Her hand clamped onto my arm, fingers digging in. "You can't go out there." But a grim certainty had settled over me. If someone was in danger, inaction felt like complicity. I brushed a kiss against her forehead, meant to reassure but likely failing, and slipped out the door. The night air was cool, carrying the scent of damp earth and distant pines. Silence reigned again, absolute and unnerving. I moved cautiously along the row of numbered doors, senses straining. Passing room 3, I heard it, a low, muffled sob from within. I pressed my ear flat against the cold wood. Yes, weeping, punctuated by the murmur of a man's voice, low and menacing. My pulse hammered against my ribs. Police? But where were we, precisely? Miles from anywhere, surely. Response time could be hours. Knock? Intervene? What if I'd misread the sounds, stumbled into something I shouldn't? Before the debate could resolve, a heavy hand landed squarely on my shoulder. I spun, adrenaline flooding my system, fists instinctively raising, only to find myself inches from the weathered face of Silas, the old man from the office. "Everything satisfactory, son?" he inquired, his tone deceptively mild, almost avuncular. "Bit late for a constitutional, isn't it?" I thought I heard something," I stammered, feeling suddenly exposed and foolish under his unwavering gaze. "A shout, maybe, or..." Silas's grip on my shoulder intensified, fingers biting into muscle. Likely just the television set. Folks do enjoy their fright pictures late at night, you understand. Best head on back to your room now. Wouldn't want the little lady getting anxious. The casual mention of Ilara, the little lady, jolted me. How did he know she was with me? We hadn't volunteered that detail. "Right," I managed, striving for a steady voice. "Sorry to disturb. Good night." I retreated towards room 7, acutely aware of his eyes tracking my every step. The moment I was back inside, I threw the deadbolt, the same one whose earlier sound had chilled me, and turned to Ilara. She was perched on the edge of the bed, a statue carved from fear. "We're leaving," I stated, grabbing our duffel bags. "Right now." "What? Why? What did you see?" I relayed the encounter in clipped, urgent sentences as we scrambled into our clothes, stuffing belongings haphazardly. She listened, her initial disbelief yielding to the raw panic she must have heard in my voice. We were reaching for the door when the sound froze us. The distinct scrape and tumble of a key turning in the lock. From the outside. A cold wave of terror crashed over me. "Bathroom," I hissed, seizing Alara's hand, pulling her across the small room. We tumbled into the tiny tiled space, easing the flimsy door shut behind us. Crouching together in the bathtub, enveloped by the smell of mildew and cheap soap, we held our breath, listening. The room door creaked open. Footsteps entered, slow, deliberate, mirroring the ones I'd heard earlier. Now. Agnes's voice floated in, saccharine and utterly chilling. "No need for hide and seek, my dears. We only wish to chat." Alara's fingers dug into my arm. My eyes darted around the cramped space. A thin plastic shower curtain, miniature bars of soap, nothing remotely useful as a weapon. The bathroom doorknob rattled. "Come along out." Silas's rough voice joined his wife's. "Makes things less complicated." My thoughts raced, frantic. What was their game? Robbery seemed too simple. That hungry look in Silas's eyes, the muffled terror from room 3. This felt deeper, darker. The flimsy bathroom door splintered inwards. Agnes and Silas stood framed in the doorway, the kindly masks utterly dissolved. Their eyes were glacial, appraising. Silas brandished a long, cruelly curved knife. Agnes clutched a worn leather satchel, reminiscent of a physician's bag. "Well, look what we have here. A pair of little birds trying to fly the coop," Agnes said, her smile twisting into a predatory leer. "Can't have you upsetting the arrangement, now, can we?" "What do you want?" I demanded, my voice shaking despite my effort to project strength. Silas emitted a dry chuckle, devoid of warmth. "Oh, it's not about our wants, boy. It's about our clients' needs, and they do pay a premium for fresh acquisitions, healthy ones like yourselves." The implication struck like a physical blow, stealing my breath. Trafficking, organs, the specifics didn't matter. The conclusion was the same. We were merchandise. "Now," Agnes cooed, fumbling inside her satchel. "Just a little prick. You'll have a nice sleep and wake up somewhere, purposeful." She advanced, a syringe glinting in her hand. Primal instinct surged. I launched myself forward, tackling Silas low. We hit the floor in a tangle of limbs, the knife skittering across the tiles. Alara shrieked as Agnes lunged for her, but my fierce Alara fought back, surprisingly strong, striking out and knocking the syringe from the old woman's grasp. Chaos erupted in the confines of the bathroom, a desperate scramble of flailing fists and grappling bodies. I landed a lucky, solid blow to Silas's jaw, momentarily stunning him. Scrambling upright, I saw Alara had somehow gotten Agnes trapped in a fierce headlock, her face flushed crimson with effort. "Run!" I screamed, grabbing Alara's wrist, hauling her with me. We exploded out of the bathroom, through the motel room door left ajar, and into the vast, cool darkness. Behind us, furious shouts erupted from Agnes and Silas, their voices raw with thwarted rage. We ran, propelled by sheer terror, bare feet pounding the cracked asphalt, lungs burning. Directionless, driven only by the need for distance, for escape from the suffocating horror of the sundown lodge. Minutes later, or perhaps an eternity, shimmering lights appeared ahead through the trees, the blessed fluorescent glow of a 24-hour truck stop. We burst through the glass doors, gasping, wild-eyed, surely appearing deranged to the lone cashier blinking owlishly behind the counter. "Please," Ilara choked out between ragged breaths. "Call the police, the motel, Sundown Lodge. They tried." The cashier, a young woman with tired eyes, didn't waste time on questions. One look at our disheveled state, our palpable terror, was enough. She reached for the phone. The hours that followed dissolved into a surreal haze of flashing lights, hushed police interviews, and styrofoam cups of bitter coffee. As dawn painted the sky in bruised shades of purple and gray, the horrifying truth unfurled. The Sundown Lodge, under the stewardship of Agnes and Silas, aliases we later learned, had been a nightmarish hub for years, a place where weary travelers were ensnared, drugged, and sold into unimaginable fates. We were the fortunate outliers, the ones who slipped through the cracks. So many others hadn't. Finally, pulling away from the truck stop, pointed once more towards Ilara's sister's wedding, impossibly, unforgivably late. I couldn't shake the phantom grip of Silas's hand on my shoulder, the chilling sweetness of Agnes's voice. The casual decision to stop, seduced by a flickering neon sign, had nearly unraveled our lives. We don't favor the quiet, off-highway motels anymore. Our journeys are now mapped with rigid precision, confined to brightly lit chain hotels and bustling towns. Some might call it paranoia. But we know better. We know the vacancies aren't always just rooms, and the most terrifying monsters often wear the kindest smiles. It announced itself not with a clamor, but a whisper of movement, the soft, insistent patrol of footfalls just beyond my door. Midnight had long surrendered the city below, and I, Elias Vance, adrift in the worn velvet armchair by the window, sought anchorage for my restless limbs. This Eerie in the sovereign arms, perched above the city's slumber, promised solitude, a quiet haven on its uppermost floor. Yet the antique floorboards in the corridor groaned their secrets, each creak amplified in the profound hush. Pressing my ear to the dense oak panel, I listened. The steps possessed a distinct rhythm, heel striking softly, then toe, a brief hesitation, the sound of a turn. No accompanying murmur, no sigh, only that solitary repetitive shuffle charting its unseen circuit. Through the fisheye lens of the peephole, the hallway unfurled, a ribbon of dim amber light illuminating patterned carpet and a receding line of closed doors. Vacant. Utterly vacant. Still, the footsteps persisted, unwavering in their cadence like memory pacing out its worn grooves. A knot tightened low in my chest. My throat felt scoured by dust. I'd sought sanctuary in this edifice of faded grandeur, a peculiar choice given the whispers that clung to its reputation like old ivy. But isolation, not solace, was my aim. A place stark enough to mirror the bleak landscape of my recent past, the detritus of ill-judged ventures. Instead, this. Footfalls cloaked in silence. When dawn eventually bled through the thick damask curtains, staining the room gray, I remained awake, frayed nerves thrumming, a low burn of irritation beneath the fear. I resolved to dismiss it. Old buildings breathe, don't they? Timbers contracting, pipes singing their ancient tunes. That had to be the truth. Downstairs, the man at the reception desk had offered a smile freighted with knowing, a subtle incline of his head that seemed to query, "The top floor? Bold choice." I'd brushed it aside then. Phantoms and hexes held no place in my rational world. I merely required distance from the life I'd fractured, from the echoes of my own stumbles. Later that afternoon, propelled by a need for logic, I roamed the corridors. The top floor was a gallery of gilded neglect, lined with ornate mirrors whose silvered surfaces swam with distortion, and dusty portraits of anonymous figures, long-departed guests perhaps, or proprietors swallowed by decades past. I paused before a particularly large, rectangular looking-glass flanking the grand staircase. Its antique surface warped my reflection, elongating my form into something unnervingly slender. As the hallway lamps flickered, a spasm of light and shadow, I could have sworn another shape pulsed beside mine in the glass, a transient smudge of darkness. A blink, a breath held tight. It vanished. Fatigue, I reasoned. Simple exhaustion. Further down, I discovered a small, forsaken lounge. Etiolated armchairs huddled around a low table strewn with yellowed brochures heralding bygone hotel galas. Tucked amongst them lay a photograph, stark black and white, its corners curling with age. It depicted this very corridor, frozen in some earlier epoch. Guests in stiff attire posed against the familiar wallpaper. My gaze snagged on the background. There, half obscured by a doorway, lingered a tall figure, head tilted as if perpetually listening. No caption offered a name, only this spectral presence caught on brittle paper. Replacing the photograph, a sudden chill raised gooseflesh on my arms. Night descended once more, thick and absolute. I wedged a heavy chair beneath the doorknob, a flimsy bulwark against the unknown. Around the same hour, the pacing recommenced, its rhythm slow, inexorable. Cocooned in bed, blankets drawn high, I focused on the mechanics of breathing, whispering internal denials, imagination, stress. Then, the brass doorknob rattled, a tentative probing that escalated into a distinct attempt to turn. My heart hammered against my ribs. Leaning up on my elbows, sweat filming my brow, I watched the knob twist insistently. The chair held firm. A profound silence followed. No knock, no voice offered explanation. When I finally crept to the door and peered through the peephole, the corridor lay undisturbed, bathed in its usual sallow glow. Empty. It was then I sensed it, a displacement of air behind me. I spun, heart seizing. The heavy curtain near the window billowed softly, though the room was utterly still, the air stagnant. The old radiator emitted a low hiss, but no draft stirred. A faint, elusive scent touched the air. Old cologne, perhaps, or disturbed dust from some long-sealed recess. I retreated, stumbling backward over my own valise, a visceral certainty twisting in my gut. Something shared this space. Sleep became a distant shore. Hours crawled by. Then, in the suffocating dark just before dawn, I heard it inside the room. Footsteps, muffled by the carpet but undeniably present. I jolted upright, vision swimming. My palms were slick, my chest constricted. Fumbling for the bedside lamp, I flicked the switch. Light flooded the room, revealing nothing amiss. Yet I felt it. a brush against my arm, ephemeral as cobweb, raising every fine hair. Straining my ears, I caught a faint scuff near the mahogany dresser, my gaze, drawn inexorably, fixed on the opposite wall. A shadow stretched there, impossibly long and thin, swaying gently without source or caster. Tears pricked my eyes. A scream felt futile, swallowed by the profound isolation. I had come here utterly alone. Who would possibly answer? Morning offered its fragile truce. The footsteps faded with the darkness. Downstairs, I confronted the morning receptionist, my voice tight. "Is anyone else registered on my floor?" He offered a strained, apologetic smile. "No, Mr. Vance, the entire level is yours." I pressed him about master keys, about access. He shrugged, murmuring platitudes about the building's eccentricities, other guests reporting odd sounds, but assuring me no real harm had ever befallen anyone. His eyes, however, betrayed a desire to avoid entanglement. He suggested a room on a lower floor. Against all reason, I refused. A perverse compulsion held me fast, a sense that something in that echoing corridor sought my attention, and a stubborn fragment of my own battered pride demanded understanding. That afternoon became a meticulous investigation. I examined the heavy oak door, traced its grain. I even removed the chair and flung the door open at the anticipated hour of the haunting, hoping to surprise. What? Emptiness greeted me. My phone, deployed as a recorder, captured only ambient creaks and the building's low hum. I paced the corridor again, pausing at each clouded mirror, running fingertips along the tarnished gilt frames, collecting dust beneath my nails. At the large mirror by the stairs, I leaned in close. My reflection was a stranger, pallid, eyes bloodshot, hair plastered with anxious sweat. As I stared into my own haunted gaze, a flicker danced at the periphery. I forced calm. Then, unmistakably, a shape drifted across the warped surface behind my reflected shoulder. I whirled around. The corridor stretched vacant, silent, yet the mirror's surface seemed to shimmer, to vibrate with a held breath. By the third night, my composure had frayed beyond repair. The methodical pacing outside my door resumed like clockwork. The handle turned, a gentle coaxing that grew bolder, more demanding. I barricaded the door with my luggage, creating a clumsy fortress. Soft scraping sounds whispered against the wood, punctuated by something that might have been breathing. Shallow, dry, terribly close. Ear pressed to the panel, I caught its faint, rasping cadence. Retreating to the bed, my heart pounded a frantic rhythm that tasted metallic on my tongue. Shadows in the room deepened, pooling like spilled ink. The curtains stirred again in the breathless air. I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to impose denial on my trembling body. Then the violation intensified. The footsteps were inside again, circling the bed. My hand shot out for the lamp. The switch clicked uselessly. I tried to rise, but an immense pressure settled on my shoulders, not physical, but an overwhelming psychic weight, a warning. The air grew thick with the scent of decay, of time trapped in sealed spaces. Gritting my teeth, I fumbled for my phone, activating its small flashlight. The beam sliced through the darkness, illuminating only empty air. But on the far wall, the impossible shadow reappeared, taller now, its indistinct head tilted in that familiar, listening pose from the photograph. "Leave me alone." The plea tore from my raw throat. Silence answered, yet within it I sensed a dreadful patience, an entity waiting for my surrender. My thoughts scattered like frightened birds. Flee? Abandon the room, the hotel, this waking nightmare? But as I lurched towards the door, the knob rattled violently, synchronized with the returning rhythm of footsteps in the hall. Trapped. It intended to keep me here, locked in this terrifying loop. In a surge of desperate action, I snatched a sheet from the bed, stumbled into the corridor, and flung it over the large mirror by the stairs, obscuring its accusing surface. Stepping back into my room, I heard the footsteps follow, their muffled tread seeming almost amused. I dragged the chair back under the knob, leaning against the door, breath sawing in my chest, tremors racking my frame. Sometime in the gray hours nearing dawn, delirious with exhaustion, I tore through the dresser drawers seeking anything. My fingers closed on brittle paper, old hotel stationery. Scrawled in elegant, faded cursive was a message. I cannot leave this room. He walks the halls each night, and when I look through the mirror, I see him behind me. A cold dread seeped into my bones. Not the first. Decades ago, another soul snared in this same terror. The realization struck me. This presence didn't hunger for violence, but for witness. It fed on fear, perpetuating its cycle night after night, retreating only with the light. Drawing a ragged breath, heart slamming against my ribs, I returned to the corridor. I stood before the shrouded mirror, yanked away the sheet, and forced myself to look. For one protracted, nauseating moment, I saw it clearly. A tall silhouette standing directly behind my reflection, leaning close, spectral fingers hovering near my shoulder, its form warped and sinister in the antique glass. I blinked hard, and the corridor was empty once more. But the knowledge remained, absolute and chilling. It was there, always there, waiting. I stumbled back into the room, slammed the door, bracing my weight against it. Morning light, pale and indifferent, crept in. My body ached, hollowed out, as if I'd run for miles in my sleep. Departure was no longer a choice, but a necessity. I packed with frantic haste, the hairs on my neck prickling with unseen attention. Reaching the threshold, the doorknob resisted, sticking fast. I wrenched it, the wood groaning in protest, until it finally gave way. The corridor lay still. I practically sprinted towards the elevator, suitcase bumping clumsily behind me. In the polished brass panel beside the elevator doors, my reflection confronted me. A ravaged man, visibly altered by nights of sleepless dread. As I leaned closer, attempting to smooth my collar, to gather the fragments of myself, I noticed it. My reflection's eyes seemed darker, colder, its posture subtly alien, and hovering just behind that reflected image, faint but undeniable, was the familiar outline, the tall figure. It lingered at the edge of vision, an insinuation, as if it had somehow merged with my shadow, or tethered itself so closely I might never shake it loose. The elevator arrived with the soft chime. Before stepping into the descending cage, I cast one last glance at the brass panel. My breath hitched. My reflection offered a faint, knowing smile, an expression I swear I did not make. A wave of nausea rolled through me and I recoiled, nearly upsetting my luggage. The corridor remained silent, yet the phantom pacing echoed in my ears, the steady tread of something that refused release. I fled. The sovereign arms shortly after, but walking away into the indifferent city streets, I felt an unnatural tension coil in my muscles, a persistent stiffness across my shoulders. Later, catching my own gaze in a shop window, I thought I glimpsed a shadow at my back, impossibly tall, impossibly close. I looked again. It was gone. But the certainty is fractured now. Perhaps I carried that presence away with me, locked within the fearful chambers of my own heart. Perhaps, forevermore, I will feel that spectral pressure on the doorknob, hear that quiet pacing in the silent moments, and glimpse that distorted shape hovering in every reflection, patiently waiting to be noticed again.